pass from Havili was magic. The shift on for Crotty. Boom, far down you go, Quackett Smith. Me, oh my, I have enjoyed that. Yes, boy.
Sit back, relax, put your belt on, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Draft Rugby Show. I'm your host, Kargi, and tonight we're going to discuss the Wallabies and Pumas 15-all draw on the weekend. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Harry and Nelson, and the great man himself, Paul Tait, joining us from... Paul, are you in Brazil or in Argentina currently?
Yes, Brazil. Can't really go to Argentina because of the rules at the moment. It's very hard to get there, yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think I've got that wrong twice before. I've said joining us from Argentina. So this time, third time lucky. But no, look, if you are listening to us, please, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. But otherwise, you can find a video of this Zoom call on YouTube. Remember to like, subscribe, and all of that jazz. Yeah, well, look, so Paul joining us once again, the man on the ground, all things Argentina rugby. Paul writes for America Rugby News, a bunch of other publications, and really is the go-to, the source of all things Argentina rugby. Just how excited are you, Paul? Look, we've got to give a huge raps. Argentina has been amazing.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. Everybody is that I know in the Argentine media, they're all just overwhelmed. Ex-Pumas, ex-administrators. So everybody is like extremely happy. And I mean, I've been getting messages from people that I know from online, from something 5 or more years ago. People that I met at a rugby match somewhere. So it's pretty, it has left a mark. But I mean, the feeling is kind of like, from most people, is that, we did it. And also that it wasn't luck or anything like that. This was really hard work. And I mean, that match against New Zealand, I watched it twice and thought the second time they really dominated. Cool, calm, and this was a Springboks performance, I thought. This is how South Africa defeat the All Blacks.
Just for someone on the other end of this, the side here, not an Argentinian supporter, through and through, they have just won so many people over. I think they're taken over, Japan in recent years of being everyone's second favorite team, just because the passion, playing for their country, Pablo Matera, and just they are going hard at every opportunity they can.
Yeah, I mean, Matera obviously, was in the headlines for talking to the ref as he did, and I mean, you could look either way at that incident. I mean, personally, I thought it was fine because I mean, the way the rules are nowadays, you're not allowed to do anything in terms of foul play. So we saw what happened. It was nothing serious, but of course, they're fired up, and then. In Newcastle, what happened post-match with the supporter getting the jersey? I mean, that was just another instance there of rugby's in these guys' veins. They're playing for their country, like you said, and they turned up for a reason. And I mean, we don't need to talk about the missing team or anything like that, but just. The dedication there is something which really does make an impression. Many people are just like really inspired or just happy because this has been the year that it has. And they get to see the effort going in, and it truly is something great because sport is supposed to be more than just competition between team A and B. There's supposed to be other things. World Rugby prides itself on values, and a lot of times we see in Rugby World Cups and just general international competition, we see ex-Maori All Blacks playing for Scotland and now for Ireland as examples, and it's just like can be really off-putting depending on who you are. I've voiced my opinion on that regularly. I mean, I have no interest in watching these examples of players, especially when you have Spain disqualified from World Cup qualifiers because two of their players had been France under 20s players. But I mean, at the same time, we've got Wales playing with a host of England under 20 players, and they're allowed to, based on who they played against, which is just crazy. So when you've got all these things going on, it's highly political, just to return to the values of sport, I think that's what ultimately has been the driving factor behind just many people being impressed with the team.
I think I'm catching what you're putting down, Paul. You're saying that you guys just need a couple of Fijians and you'll be number one in the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. I was talking the other day with the Brazilian friend, and he knows a lot. He's been to 2 World Cups, and he was asking me what I thought about this, and I paused. And I said, well, you know, the Wallabies in 2003, they basically did a similar thing to what's happening now, which is they got a back three from rugby league. So they had Sailor, Rogers, one more kid. Yeah, and I mean, just ignore eligibility. I mean, and look what they did, and it's basically the same thing they've been doing in recent times. So Argentina compared to that, I mean, if we talk about that quickly, that opening game in Sydney in the World Cup, I mean, Australia were way better in all areas. Argentina just mentally inferior, a few amateur players involved, a lot of professionals, and above all, they're just not good enough. Australia were a much better team. So what's happened from there to now is pretty noticeable in certain positions, especially the wings. I mean, today the Pumas wingers are world class, and they never were. They were always okay. Now they're world class, and so it's really good because the last World Cup in Japan, they refused to even go down that route because they were Jaguares first. So you had to be exceptional, even if you were, you know, clearly deserving your opportunity. You weren't picked. So, I mean, that change has really revolutionized them. And I mean, you would probably say that the Jaguares and European-based Pumas wingers, they are, you know, Fijian caliber. Some of these guys are really exceptional.
Sure. Yeah, there's some brilliant players coming through, and you definitely have, you know, some small agile wingers. You've got, you know, guys that are rejuvenating that sort of style of play as well, which is pretty awesome. Similar to we saw in the World Cup with, you know, Cheslin Colby and a few other smaller guys coming out and really making their name on the international stage. You were chatting about the Jaguares there. We actually had a listener question from one of our loyal listeners, Mitch Evans, 94. He was saying, how much of the recent success of the Pumas is down to the Jaguares' involvement in Super Rugby? And is there an alternative to playing in France, England next year for those players so that they will have some high quality rugby being played?
Sure. Well, definitely it was tremendous, of course, but this is not a single factor. This is multifaceted. So I would say that what happened was essentially where there were already players abroad in certain positions, or where they did move abroad, then Jaguares were able to convert into producing new players. So in terms of wings, we can definitely say that's what happened. So Imhoff was already in Europe from 2011. Cordeiro left after, I want to say 2016, maybe it was 2017. The point is, his departure, then along came Delgui, based on being an available spot. And Ramiro Mochano was very similar in that regard. He went from very much a fringe fullback to being a starting winger based on the team there. So Jaguares. So that happened. It also, though, wasn't so straightforward. For example, Moroni Santer ended up playing wing a lot, based on the needs of the team, because he was a good player and they had good centers. And so where do we put him? So that was, I mean, was that a positive or a negative? And I mean, another one is Sanchez. He left. They got the quarterfinals with him. Then he left for France. And then the next season they had nobody. Really, they had the experienced player they had was Santiago Gonzalez Iglesias, and he couldn't make the team. So they ended up going with Bonicia and Miotti, two guys. One was a rookie, the other one had a handful of matches, but nothing more than that. And I mean, that went really well. So that was an example there of Jaguares definitely improving the number of players and benefiting all around. But I think the best answer to the question would be that they put all their eggs in one basket with Jaguares. And the Pumas last year, the World Cup, that's what they were. There were obviously a few exceptions. Figasio, Sanchez, Bichette. I think that was it, to be honest, 3 names. So, you know, they didn't pick Imhoff, they didn't pick Cordero, they didn't pick Gomez Cordele, and other names. So what's happened? What's that?
Facundo Issa as well. They didn't pick him.
Yeah, didn't pick Issa, exactly. And they admitted that was a mistake. They didn't explicitly say it was a mistake, but what they did say was that Javier Ortega Decio, he was dropped. He's not in the rugby championship. He went to play for the next 15, Argentina 15, in the South American Four Nations, and they made it clear. They said, look, he wasn't good enough last year. That was it. And at the start of Super Rugby, the matches we did get, he was out of favor.
Yeah.
So they didn't specifically say, sorry, Facundo, you should have played. But I mean, it's pretty clear now. They went for Ortega Decio because he was the number 2 line-out guy after Petty. Excellent line-out jumper. I mean, they got a good try against France from that very player there, from a rolling ball, from a line-out. So, but now, I mean, we're seeing far more options in that regard in the line-out. So that's one positive aspect.
Yeah.
So the second half of the question, could you repeat it?
Yeah, no, that was about what can we do to prevent all the Argentine players going over to France and England? How can we get them involved next year, potentially in Super Rugby? I mean, we saw Julian Montoya sign for the Force. Fantastic, probably the best signing ever for the Force.
A couple guys going to the Force, weren't there?
That's true, yeah. How can we get that happening?
Yeah. Look, I think that unfortunately we're in the situation where we're not surprised, which is that where on earth is the global season? What is going on? Why is World Rugby not doing anything? The whole COVID-19
should be perfect.
You know, let's hit the reset button hasn't happened.
No.
So I mean, we're looking at basically the same idea of what's happening now will have to be what they do. So we're going to have, you know, let's say half from the south, half from the north, under a perfect scenario. Jaguares will not play Super Rugby. The team won't disappear. It's a trademark and all the rest of it. Let's see if they do play in the Superliga Americana or not. I mean, that's what they realistically have to do. It's cost effective. And the doors are closed elsewhere. I mean, they would have played in South Africa. That's what they wanted to do, but it's just not viable now.
Yeah.
So let's see. I mean, I do think more players will leave. I know that the Force it's not official, but I've been told the Force have also got Medrano. Right. So there's one more. Yeah. Most of the
sounds great.
Yeah, and there's another Force room player, which was Santiago Iglesias. I saw that on an Australian source, but this just doesn't make sense to me. He was gone from Super Rugby. He was in Japan. He was a utility player rather than a guy with his name in the 23. So I have also seen speculation that it will be Carreras, the fullback. That would make sense. I mean, if that's true, then great. Ultimately, the team that was Jaguares, all but one player from the Super Rugby final have either left or are attached, so to speak. I mean, there's speculation if they're leaving. It's just Tait, the prop, who officially is still a Jaguar. So let's see if more of them go. And I mean, if they do, if this happens, it's not a bad thing. I mean, just to give you an example, I remember in 2007, before the World Cup, a Fijian friend told me, basically said, if we get to the quarterfinals, it's because of France. That's what his words were. And I mean, they did, of course. And I mean, that's it. You don't need to have your own professional league. You need to have players playing in professional competitions.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, if Argentina cannot do it themselves, I mean, we hope they can.
Yeah.
But if they can, let's see what they can do. I mean, the Super League it's there. It exists.
I think it's a big thing about having players playing together regularly. And I think for me, that was one of the biggest things the Pumas have done for a good chunk of time now. Obviously, sprinkling in the people from overseas, you can see the effect these guys have been wanting to play, I'm sure, in the Argentine jersey for quite some time. So to be able to get that chance, they're not going to want to let that go.